Welcome to We Question and Learn. We're celebrating our 20th year on the air here at FM 91.3 WQLN NPR. We're on about a dozen podcast venues. I discovered the other day there's about a half dozen more, so the program has a good reach on the internet, but most important, it's on 91.3 FM, and it's broadcast the first Sunday of the month, and then all the podcast venues, including on WQLN.org, are on there, and we sort of leave those up for about a year. Today, we have a special guest, thanks to Lindy Smart, who's the, can I say you're the Executive Director of Intelligence Studies or just the Director?
Yeah, you can keep that executive in there. That's the full title, and it makes me sound even cooler, doesn't it?
I'm so thrilled, yes. And Dr. Christopher Mansour is on the line as well. Greetings to you.
Hi, how are you?
We're great. I was looking forward to this interview when Dr. Smart suggested it. And Christopher Mansour is the co-founder and assistant professor of the cybersecurity program at Mercyhurst University. And you have a PhD in engineering with a concentration in cybersecurity from Villanova University. And before I read your entire resume here, I just want to say we're grateful to talk about the topic today. It's a thrill to have you both discuss something that's obviously in this day and age very, very critical. Lindy, could you give us a brief outline on how you relate to the good Dr. Chris Mansour's department and how the entire relationship is built over at Mercyhurst University?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, even before I started back here at Mercyhurst last May, I was already in conversations to Dr. Mansour. He had reached out to me, excited about the possibility of how we could bridge cyber and intel together. So our relationship started, even before I was back here in Erie, which was great. And I think, it kind of started with us just making that recognition that cyber and intelligence are, there's overlap there with the data, with the critical thought, with anticipating what's going to be next within those fields. And so I think we both have the spirit of, whatever best that we can do for our students, and, thinking about, how we can collaborate. We might not know what it is yet, but we're open to it. And so that's kind of how the first conversation went. And from there, would love to hear Dr. Mansour's thoughts on this too. We initially thought of, we open our events to each other. So if Dr. Mansour has a cyber speaker or if we have an Intel speaker, we make sure all of our students have that ability to work together. We've also started I have a strategic capstone for our seniors here that they go through, and we've opened that up to allow Dr. Mansour's students to be a part of that. So they get their capstone credits for cyber while working on a strategic capstone project for us. So we've been able to create some, interesting projects and work with some different companies that we might not have if it had just been an intelligence project. So that's a little bit about the background of how we got connected, and just really thankful to be able to work with someone that's so willing to try out new opportunities.
Let me add, for folks who have not been introduced to Dr. Lindy Smart, if you go to WQLN.org/We Question, just scroll down a little bit and you'll hear an interview. She was kind enough to speak with us here on WQLN. And Dr. Mansour, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this program and how long you've been there at Mercyhurst University.
So for the past 30 years, Mercyhurst University had a leading intelligence studies program starting from here, from our university. And they recognize as well the growing significance of cybersecurity in the digital landscape. So that is why they wanted to start a cyber program, and they had a job posting, and I joined Mercyhurst in 2018 to found, along one colleague of mine, the cybersecurity program at Mercyhurst. And the goal is straightforward: establish a program basically that provides students with the knowledge and applied practical insights into cybersecurity, complementing the excellence that they've shown in the field of intelligence, so that we can prepare together the students to safeguard our nation's digital infrastructure and daily lives. And that's how I joined. I started in 2018, July, And officially, we kicked off the program in the fall of 2018, which is basically school year 2018-2019.
So to be clear, the two departments, are you housed together or are you independent physically and structurally?
So we are two independent departments. However, we are housed under the School of Intelligence, Computing, and Global Politics, and we collaborate and overlap in a variety of aspects.
Okay. How did you originally get involved with this? You have a wonderful resume. What prompted you to get involved in this whole area of academia, research, and outreach? What provoked you to get involved with this particular topic?
So that's a great question. So while I was studying engineering, I realized that there is a lot of focus on either hardware design or software design, and there's no one is looking around the combination of both. And at that time, as you may know, we depend heavily on digital systems, on data, and data is target for a lot of nefarious actors out there. So it was interesting to me to try and find ways to protect that information, especially when our critical infrastructure, like from our power grids to our healthcare industries, to our academic industries, financial industries, manufacturing industries, you name it, they all rely on digital infrastructure. And that was a target for a lot of nefarious actors out there. And there was a need to protect that infrastructure for our future, for our nation's prosperity. So that intrigued me, and I decided to look into how we can study and design different systems, and whether it is software, hardware, networks, or even policies and regulations in order to protect all of these systems from being attacked through cyber.
This may be an off-the-cuff question, but how do you interface with the government? Do they come and seek your services? Do you offer information to them? Do you train them? Do they come and visit with you to try and learn what's going on in the world? How does this all work?
So basically, it's not like what happens is through our connections with the Intelligence Studies Department as well, there's a lot of activities that happen in collaboration between our school and a lot of government entities. But like we do tabletop exercises together. We did one in Buffalo, for example, in March of 2022. Mm-hmm. We did another one in Philadelphia, another one here in Neely with the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Secret Service. These kind of activities are more to study overall and share information about what are the next threats and how they can affect the critical infrastructure, and what can we do to protect these things. It's kind of tabletop exercises. The objective is lessons learned, sharing information, and what can we do next. That's how the collaboration starts. And I'm sure Lindy can comment more if about like projects that happens with other government agencies through our intelligence as well.
I was looking at... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lindy.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I think Dr. Mansour, what he's built is really at the forefront of that type of collaboration and those tabletop exercise, where they're really looking at, worst case scenario and then planning to make sure that we have things structurally safe. And then we do partner with the government both for, project work that involves our students or within the capstones. And I think the big thing is just, with both of our programs, the alumni that then go out into the field, are always well connected back with us. And that's how we kind of get that feedback too of, what's most relevant, what's top of mind for government, for private sector, to where we can lean in and either address through the curriculum or through projects.
Dr. Mansour, I was looking at your resume again. Cryptography, am I saying that correct? Information security, computer networks. These are all things, network security, computer architecture. These are all things that are critical to the business and banking and even education arena. Would you say business is a larger type of class, or a class of business that would be interested in what you teach? Or would it be education? Or would it be the government?
Yeah, so cybersecurity is at the forefront, applies to as I said earlier, at every aspect, whether it is nonprofits, small nonprofits, to even bigger enterprises, and across the multiple sectors, finance, healthcare. We saw that the government just released healthcare regulations or healthcare cybersecurity recommendations through the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. All these businesses can benefit from those scenarios and education. Education isn't just for the engineers who build systems. It's for everybody across the board. Cybersecurity is not just an IT role. It's a role of everybody inside an organization. Every individual has to be educated or knowing or up to date with the latest threats out there. And we see that now organizations are realizing the dangers of cyber attacks and what it can lead them to run out of business if they don't follow necessary recommendations and necessary compliance with certain regulations. So we have students who work for businesses as SOC analysts, which is basically Security Operations Center. They conduct monitoring of different incidents and events, incident response, making sure that everything is updated, making sure everything is functioning correctly, encryption is in place so that we can prevent data from being exfiltrated or data from being exposed, prevention from ransomware attacks. All of these things are essential at the organization level. And what we do in our programs is we provide the students with all these skill sets, whether it is defensive and offensive to a certain extent, in the sense where they ethically test the systems so that they can know whether there is any weaknesses or vulnerabilities in them, and recommend how to fix those vulnerabilities so that we can avoid a breach in the future. And I always tell everybody, it's not a matter whether you will be attacked or not as an organization. It's a matter of when you are attacked, are you ready to respond and have continuity of your business and your mission?
It's rather disgruntling. We all have an exposure. That's what you are telling us.
That's correct.
Regardless if it's banking, education, automobile manufacturing, anything that would involve machinery, equipment. Of course, you're an engineer to a great degree. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If we could take a half a second, what kind of crimes have been committed? Are you allowed to speak on a topic or just generally? What have you seen as been a vulnerability in the American manufacturing society, for example?
So when it comes to the manufacturing industry, a lot of the manufacturing or lines of industry work has what we call legacy systems. And the reason we call them legacy is they are systems that were designed to do one particular function. You can't shut down a business altogether to just update one thing here and there. Unlike like computer systems and IT, where it's okay to kind of apply an update or a software update on a Tuesday morning or something. It's annoying, but you can tolerate it. But in a business where there's a manufacturing line going on, you cannot just shut it down just to upgrade a system or a small component. They run on legacy protocols. And those legacy devices and legacy protocols were not designed with encryption and security in mind. So that is why when they are now connected to the real world through internet and through digitization, threats can travel from the business processes and the business logic, which depends heavily on the information technology side of things, to those devices used by manufacturing, which we call operational technology. Mm-hmm. And when those are exposed to threats, that's where the problem happens. So what we try to do is we try to do what we call like network segmentation, continuous monitoring of these systems so that we avoid having any vulnerability or any threat targeting any vulnerability of those legacy systems to protect manufacturing. This is one side. So, for example, I take you back to last year, Smart Water Facility in Florida. Mm-hmm. Somebody was able to hack into the human-machine interface of that system and basically try to increase the sodium hydroxide level in the water treatment. I'm not sure if the chemical is right, so don't judge me. I'm not a chemistry expert, but I think the sodium hydroxide was used to treat the water. Mm-hmm. But at a higher concentration, it can cause problems. Luckily, though, the professional sitting on the machine realized that he's not controlling the machine, someone else was, and they were able to stop it and put an end to it. But imagine if he couldn't or she couldn't see that attack happening, then how many people would have been poisoned through different concentrations of chemicals in the water. And I'm not here trying to scare people, but again, these manufacturing or these systems are prone to cyber attacks. And what we try to do is to make sure that they are implemented correctly, they are separated correctly. There is a lot of security measuring and detection systems that are there to prevent this from happening. And then I take you back also to lately with the MGM resorts or Caesar Palace in Las Vegas with ransomware. It all started with a simple phone call. through what we call phishing attack, which is phishing over a phone call. And then they are now under ransomware. Caesar, I think, paid $15 million, and MGM didn't, but they were asking for $30 million. So yeah, every business, every aspect is being a target today. And what we try to do at Mercyhurst collectively is to collaborate into educating the next generation of our defenders who will defend our nation's infrastructure, daily lives, data, and identity.
If I could ask Dr. Lindy Smart, as we look at all this, it seems to me eventually this type of scholastic education would become mandatory, almost as critical as understanding math or geography, language. Would you think that's eventually going to be the case, or is it the case already?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. And I think, at the most basic level of it, I think you'll see that across programs already, where it's critical thought, acting with integrity. If Dr. Mansour in his class looks at different handles, making sure that that's putting, or with intelligence, you're not, spying on people or something. So I think across programs, you'll see that with the critical thought, the integrity, the professionalism, being globally aware. And I think that's where we'll start to see things kind of shift more, is that globally aware. And that's how our two programs really started to work together, is, it was less the technical aspects, but more how we understand that things are more globally connected. So whether or not more schools, pick up a cybersecurity program or an intelligence program, I think what you'll start to see is more of a convergence of these different disciplines working together, knowing full well that, you can't learn history in isolation or English in isolation. It's all of those things are interconnected. So I think, how to be effective global citizens, how to act with integrity, how to leverage critical thought will become more of that underlying aspects of curriculum, as opposed to maybe just, the cyber and intelligence topics themselves.
There's so much to think about in both your fields, i.e. both parts of the university. Dr. Mansour, how many students do you teach?
So basically, we have, I teach mainly upper undergrad classmen and graduate courses. So I come across at least per semester, at least I would say 60 to 75 students, ranging from cybersecurity and intelligence studies, because here's something we are really proud of. We allow students to double major in these two important majors. So I come across at least I would say 75 to 80 students per semester. So I would say 150, 160 a year.
That's fabulous. So it would be easy to say to you, this is a great opportunity for someone who may not be sure what they want to do with their lives, coming into college or in college, trying to switch curriculum. This is a good opportunity. Would you say so?
It is a great opportunity, and something we're very proud of is this collaboration that actually exposes the students to these kind of programs that are essential for our future prosperity, but at the same time get also the well-rounded education that we offer them across campus through the variety of courses, whether it is from psychology, politics, criminal justice, intelligence, cyber, data sciences, global politics and political sciences, and the sciences themselves as well. So this convergence of programs allow the students to be interested in these kind of aspects, but yet be well-rounded and critical thinkers to be the next leaders of our nation and the next successfully businessmen of our nation, and so on.
On the line, Dr. Lindy Smart, who is the Executive Director of Intelligence Studies and a partner in education, Dr. Christopher Mansour, Chair, Cybersecurity and Data Science at Mercyhurst University.
I was going to add that, one thing that, as you said, like the opportunities that are there, and I think what Dr. Mansour and I are both proud of is that we give students opportunities from freshman all the way to senior. So, they're able to gain experience over the course of 4 years, and you don't have to come into this program knowing how to code or knowing, all the different intelligence agencies. And so I think we're both proud that, knowing that there's a great need for these types of professionals in the field, to protect our nation and our prosperity, we want to make sure that anyone that's interested in it can get into it without a fear of, well, I don't know enough about that. We'll teach you while you're here.
So even a humble fine arts and design major may find some opportunity in your wonderful university environment.
That is correct.
I was an English undergrad. So.
Oh, that's right.
And I wanted to add, I have a student who is majoring in dance and cybersecurity, just to show you the different perspectives of how the program can help. We don't expect you to be well-versed in technology and computers or intelligence areas. We will teach you everything from scratch here across the 4 years with the applied experience on real projects across the 4 years.
This may be an open question to either or both of you. In your career, have you seen, and maybe without giving a lot of detail, have you seen something that really upset you relative to our country or our manufacturing or our educational or hospital system being invaded? Any topic at all? Just to let people know these are real scenarios. Any maybe examples that you could give generally so folks could understand how serious these topics are?
You mean a cyber attack targeting something?
Yeah, something that really happened out in the real world that was brought to your attention.
We all witnessed, for example, the Colonial Pipeline, how it interrupted the gas supply to the Northeast when it happened, and there was panic across the way, right? Imagine, for example, God forbid, something we did as a tabletop exercise. It didn't happen, but you never know. Is basically, what if a power grid or part of the critical infrastructure, like the power generation, was targeted by a cyber attack from the different state actors against the United States? What results could happen? Cutting the power, wreaking havoc. A lot of things that could happen there are all serious. Every time you hear about the ransomware, every time you see a system or a company shut down because of that, businesses go under a lot of times if they don't have the necessary security hygiene or the necessary security posture. It is dangerous and it is real.
So for every incident that you hear about, there's how many others that go not reported but prevented based on the measures that are put into place. So I think both with intelligence and cybersecurity, they're kind of like the less you hear, the better.
Yes.
And so I think they're two programs that kind of quietly protect.
Well, I don't know. Less is better, because I think, you mentioned the petroleum incident. I can tell you there's probably dozens of people I know, or the power incident, did not know that happened. I think the press covers it, but I don't think, and no offense to the highly skilled writers and investigators, but I think some of this is getting so complicated that it's hard to explain on the air. Am I making sense with that?
Just to clarify, though, the Colonial Pipeline, was covered, but the power example that I gave is a hypothetical scenario that we worked on to avoid it from happening. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
There are a lot of journalists and writers out there that are really writing about these things. They have sections, but sometimes they don't get the front page, I guess, and of the news outlets or something along the lines. We only hear about it when it is more like demanding ransomware or money. But there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of news outlets that discuss these things on a daily basis and what's going on in the nation and across the world in the cyber field and the intelligence field.
So you're suggesting that in the United States, we're fairly adept at protecting ourselves?
We are doing great lately. I always recommend to check the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency websites. They are very active at releasing latest updates, latest news, latest recommendations, latest standards to the community for free. They even conduct sometimes evaluations for free for certain nonprofits and organizations. So there's a lot of work ongoing lately within the United States, especially with the push from the government and the private and public sector, being aware of the importance of cybersecurity for the nation's prosperity. There's a lot of great work going on there, and I highly recommend checking those. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency has been great providing resources for everyone.
Dr. Lindy Smart and Dr. Mansour, you two sound like you have a wonderful partnership. Do you cross paths daily, or is it a meeting every so often and talking about students? How does this work logistically? You're separate, but together in the same building. Is there a good deal of communication?
I would say
Yeah.
it's almost daily, and I consider Chris a good friend as well. So I think it started with a good working relationship, and once you can connect with someone on that level where you want the best for people, you realize that you kind of hold the same values, and so honored to be a good friend of Chris, and so we like today in a half hour we're going to meet together. So we have regular
Yep.
meetings to talk
After this
about
call.
yeah, so we talk about what's next, like how do we want to keep pushing the envelope, how can we better support each other. So I think making sure that we keep those regular lines of communication open, and then celebrating once we have those great accomplishments. I'm thrilled to work with Chris on that regular basis.
Well, Dr. Smart knows that this is the sad part of the program for me because I have to use the words, we're out of time. So with that, I'm going to invite you both back. Dr. Smart has an open invitation, so she has a topic. She definitely brings a lot of interesting things to the table that I think the community is interested and should be aware of. And Dr. Mansour, I'm going to give you that same invitation. And maybe the next time around, say in spring, bring something to the table, if you could, that maybe would let people know how important this education in both your departments is to our community and the world.
Of course. I would gladly be doing so. And I want to thank you for the opportunity. And likewise, I want to share, as Lindy said, our relationship here is not just as colleagues, we're very close friends as well. At the same time, we work for the betterment of the community and our students. We work in a lot of initiatives together. And I want to end, if you don't mind, by October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So make sure some cybersecurity hygiene goes there in terms of protecting your passwords, multi-factor authentication, be careful of phishing and things like that.
Well, let's make it Cybersecurity Year. I think we should be paying.
It's every day, technically speaking, when it comes to cybersecurity.
If that's okay with you. Thank you both. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak with you both.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tom. Great to talk with you again.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. We're celebrating our 20th year here on the air at WQLN FM 91.3, WQLN NPR. I have an opportunity today to talk with Michael Gaines, and he is the Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center, and that's right here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And greetings to you, Michael. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Tom. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for asking.
Well, I've always thought, and you know this, that you have one of the more critical organizations in our area. And I think if you could maybe mention, how long have you been at the Children's Advocacy Center?
I'd be happy to. The Children's Advocacy Center itself has been around since 2001, so 22 years, and I have been the executive director for the last 14.
Okay. It's not a difficult topic to approach, but to me it's a very sensitive topic to approach. Could you give us an outline of your mission for the organization and what you do for the community?
This Children's Advocacy Center coordinates a child-friendly, compassionate response to allegations of child abuse and also works to help work on prevention programs of child abuse.
Very good. So with that, give us an outline maybe of who is susceptible to child abuse. And I'm talking about the topic relative to, say, the number of folks that utilize your service and how the whole structure of your organization is set up and how it relates to, say, police enforcement, for example, in Northwest Pennsylvania.
Certainly. The Children's Advocacy Center of Erie County covers the entire of Erie County, Pennsylvania, and that includes more than 20 police jurisdictions and all the various municipalities and areas of the county. What we do is we interview children who there is a suspicion that they may be abused, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse, and they've been referred to us either through law enforcement or through the Child Protective Services Agency. In each year, we interview somewhere between 250 and 350 children to whom these type of allegations have been made that they perhaps were abused.
That's way too many, and you probably know that. With that said, it's not as if folks come to your office. All your What would you call them? I can't call them patients. Your folks that
We
you
call
serve.
them clients.
Thank you. I wasn't sure. It's sort of a sensitive topic, but with that said, all these come to you on referral then.
They do. They're referred, as I said, either by law enforcement, the district attorney's office, or by Child Protective Services. Yes.
Okay. And you've already indicated the number of folks that you care for during just 1 year. Has this been a consistent number or over a long period of time?
It actually has been the consistent number over the entire 22 years that we've been in existence. It was the high number that were being seen that caused Erie County, and at the time the people who were responsible to decide to bring the child advocacy model to Erie County.
Mm-hmm. Do you work with the hospitals then as well, or you have your own system, so to speak, to help care for these children?
Well, the answer is yes and.
Okay.
I say it that way because we do work with our local hospitals. Oftentimes, if parents determine that or suspect that something has happened to their children, the first place they go is to seek medical care. And that could be any of the hospitals. So we certainly do work with all of the hospitals. But there is a specialty clinic that Children's Hospital from Pittsburgh has established in the Women's Hospital down at the Hammett campus. And that specialty clinic is staffed by people trained to particularly deal with children who have been abused. And everything that they do is reviewed and made certain that it was done to the top standards by the child abuse pediatricians in the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh.
From what I've observed in the past, your goal is to decrease the trauma the child goes through. You help manage the experience so it's the lowest amount of stress any child would face in this situation. Is that pretty close to it?
It is. One of the things that everyone notices is whenever anybody engages with the criminal justice system or any of the protective systems, the stress level is high. Mm-hmm. And if that's true for adults, more so true for children. And so the whole point of a child advocacy center is to provide a child-friendly location where children can be interviewed by somebody who is specially trained to talk with children at the developmentally appropriate level, so as to allow them to tell their story without any prompting or leading it any way or another. Just let them tell what they have to say, but to do so in a setting that's child-friendly, where they're not, surrounded by scary machinery or, police officers with guns. Not that the police are scary, but the child, that's a scary thing.
Yes.
And we also video and audio record those interviews so that then the investigators, be they law enforcement or Child Protective Services or the district attorney's office, can use the interview and not have to interview the child over and over and over again as different people are part of the process. And that in itself helps reduce trauma because the child is not made to relive the events time and time and time again.
So you provide a safe haven for an investigative interview, questioning, so to speak. What's that like? I know that you don't have folks visiting off the street. That's not appropriate. What's the facility look like? How does this work for someone who cannot see what the situation is when the child is there?
Sure. When they come to our agency, they're greeted at the door by a person that we call our family care coordinator. Mm-hmm. And they're welcomed into the building, and we have a large lobby with lots of windows and light, and it's filled with toys and games for various age groups. And that's the area where the children and their family will wait. Mm-hmm. The family care coordinator gives basic demographic information and all that sort of stuff from the parents. And then the interviewer comes out and introduces himself or herself, and they welcome the child to come back with them to the interview room. And it's right up front with the child about the fact that there's a recording happening, and here's the camera, here are the microphones. So there's people in another room who are observing this as it takes place. And then they go ahead and conduct the interview while the parents wait out in that front waiting area. And the family care coordinator talks with them about the care clinic that I mentioned earlier, or about what other services are available in the community, help from the Crime Victims Center, help from the various mental health services if the child needs some counseling because they were traumatized. Other things, if the parents have concerns and they raise them, we do our very best to provide information and connect these families to whatever helps are available in the community for whatever it is they may be facing, even beyond the child abuse situation. We oftentimes are talking to them about housing and food and all kinds of things like that as well.
Michael Gaines, Executive Director, Children's Advocacy Center here in Erie, Pennsylvania, serving the whole county. Do you go beyond that at all? Do cases cross over into other jurisdictions, so to speak?
If a case happens from another county and the family is in Erie County, or the authorities from that county request us to do an interview, we certainly do. And we've done interviews from across Pennsylvania and indeed from other states across the country if the family happens to be here, because the idea is to make it most accommodating to the family so they don't have to travel long distances. But ultimately, we are focused mainly on Erie County because that's the jurisdiction we serve. Other counties often have their own child advocacy centers where if the people are in their counties, they would avail themselves of the services there.
Could you talk a few minutes about the community professionals, the folks, obviously the police department, investigators, individuals as that? Can you talk about how many people or what types of people get involved, say, in a typical interview?
Certainly. Again, the interview with the child is conducted by a person that our title is a forensic interviewer, and they work for us. But watching the interview, observing it by closed circuit television, will be law enforcement, and it could be of any of the law enforcement agencies in the county, depending on where the abuse happened, from City of Erie Police or State Police or police from Mill Creek or whatever jurisdiction. Child Protective Services, if the case is one that fits their criteria, they will be there. So people from the county child protection agency. Obviously, if the case goes forward, the district attorney's office will be involved, so it could be a prosecutor or an assistant prosecutor. But also, that's all who might be for the interview part of things. But the larger professionals, we do a multidisciplinary case review every month of the cases that we've seen to make sure that the children and their families are getting all the helps they need, not just to worry about the investigation, but also to worry about the well-being of the children and their families. So again, we people from all the medical facilities are invited. We have people from that specialty clinic I mentioned, the Crime Victims Center, various of the counseling, mental health agencies, and we at times, if it's necessary, we've had people from SafeNet, which deals with domestic violence, or we've had individuals from other local agencies that might be particularly involved in a case to help out with a situation if we know there's something that needs their attention. So we actually partner with more than 36 agencies on a regular basis to try to make sure that these children and family are well taken care of.
Michael, this sounds like it involves quite a few people. Could you talk about, say, your staff, that is folks besides folks from the police department or medical institutions? Can you talk about the folks that work at your organization?
We actually are a very small organization. So I have on staff the forensic interviewer I mentioned. I have the family care coordinator, both professionals who know how to deal with the issues that are their part of the job. Then with the CAC, besides that, we have another person who tries to make sure that they coordinate the multidisciplinary team and make sure that communication happens between all the various agencies we interface with. And then beyond that, we have a prevention coordinator, because as we try to, most of our work is primarily responding to abuse, but we'd like to get on the front side of that and try to help prevent child abuse so we don't have children going through this trauma. And so we do have a prevention coordinator, and that person works We have a parenting program we've brought to town to help people parent better. We do some other initiatives to make awareness about child safety and child protection, and that person's responsible for coordinating all of them. And then I have a part-time person who helps with development because as a nonprofit agency, we're dependent upon donations to keep doing the things we do.
And the message and the mission is clear. The activity, I'm sorry to say, is way too much for any part of the county or anywhere at all. With that said, you probably gain support in the community from your board. Do you have a large board, small board, prevalent folks, doctors, etc.? Talk a little bit about the folks who contribute their time.
We have a board of 17 people, and they do come from a cross-section of people in the county. There are mental health professionals. There are people who are in the business world, people who are in the finance world. We have people who are professionals in victim services or child protection. Really, it's a wonderful board. They're very great and caring people, and they put a lot of time and effort in. We even have a board member who is an expert in DNA technology.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Wow. You mentioned your facility, the space that you have. I guess it's okay to say where you are?
It is, yes. We're at 1334 West 38th Street, so we're right along the main drag in Erie. Easy to access whether you're coming from in town or out from the county. And the facility is it's a two-story building. The top floor is where we do most of the work with the children, and that's where the things that I've mentioned in terms of the waiting area and the interview room and the room where the people watch the interviews. We also have office space in that room for the people who do that type of service. The lower level, it's where our boardroom is and where we run our prevention services and some of those more services that we're going out to the community. We do that from our lower level, but it's a good building with good parking around it and easy access from throughout the community.
You must have, on occasion, language issues. How do you manage something like that?
Well, we do have to deal with language, as of course the community has a number of refugees and other people who have come here from various places. And the first thing we try to do is use a translator who has been approved for use by the Erie County courts.
Okay.
And that way, the interview, if it needs to go to court, can be used without any trouble. If there is no one who is a certified translator in a particular language, then we work with our partner agencies to identify who that they might use, because obviously the hospitals and law enforcement, everybody needs to talk to people. But we find the most appropriate and skilled translator available if there's not a court-certified one that happens to speak that language.
Excellent. Once again, you mentioned you had a small staff, 5, 10. I'm not sure how large.
Counting myself, the executive director, we have 4 full-time and 2 part-time individuals. So there's 6 of us.
Okay, and their duties would be taking care of the children, managing the interview, maybe going out and doing education. Maybe
all of those things.
All of those.
And as well as we have to keep meticulous records when we do things so that the agencies that do the investigation can proceed. So we keep, our records up to date. And obviously also, as any business or any nonprofit agency, we have to do all the bookkeeping and the finances and all those sort of things. So all that becomes a responsibility of the staff, and if we have a fundraising event, it's all hands on deck.
Yep. I know that feeling. We all do, right?
Indeed.
You work with quite a few organizations, the district attorney, I'm sure, legal folks, lawyers, etc. I see here that the Erie County Office of Children and Youth sometimes helps. The hospitals help. I'm missing anyone? The Crime Victim Center?
Yep.
I noticed the Achievement Center is on here.
The Achievement Center, Sarah Reed Children's Center, the Family Services of Northwest Pennsylvania. There are 3 primary counseling mental health agencies, yes.
So you act as a coordinator among many different resources to help solve this problem.
We do. I often like to use the image of being like the hub of a wheel, where we're trying to connect all the various parts and pieces together so that it all works together as a whole. And we have that contact with the family to try to help make all those connections.
What kind of work do you engage in relative to prevention? Do you have staff that does that, or do you help other organizations offer care?
Well, we do a number of things, and the first thing we have for prevention is a program called the ACT Raising Safe Kids program. It's a parenting program. It was designed by the American Psychological Association, so it's evidence-based to help parents just have a more positive relationship with their children. It's for parents of children aged 10 and under. And we have our prevention coordinator and one of our other staff members. Both are trained facilitators in that, and they would conduct those parenting classes in various settings, oftentimes schools. A number of the community schools in the Erie have had us in. The Mill Creek School District has had us in. We also will train facilitators in those various agencies. So, like, for example, Mill Creek had us train several of their guidance counselors so that they can offer the program more than just what we would be able to ourselves. The St. Benedict Education Center also, we've trained them, and they have staff who offers the program. So it's both. It's a kind of a both and. We provide the service if that's the way, the model that works best, or we provide training for agency staff if those agencies can go forward with it. Because our goal is to get as many parents trained to be able to have the best relationship with their children, and hopefully in that process help the children stay safe. So that's one of our big primary efforts. We go out and do training for people who are what they call mandated reporters, which are people that the law says if they see something, they have to make a report to the authorities if it's suspicion. And they don't have to know if it's abuse or not. They simply have to say, something seems not right, so we'll let somebody know so somebody can look into it. But oftentimes, once they've done the online state training that's required for that, they have other questions, and we'll go out to answer the questions and try to help clarify what to do in certain situations. Oftentimes people have questions about that. So we do that. We're working on bringing back a program that we did a few years ago, which is called the Period of Purple Crying, which is to help parents of very young children, 18 months and under, understand how to deal with a baby who won't stop crying, and how not to lose your cool and end up doing something that hurts the baby, but rather sometimes the idea is that there's a period in which babies cry, sometimes inconsolably for no reason. So how do you deal with that? How do you help keep your sanity while you're trying to deal with your child, and you want them, of course, to stop crying, but so we have a program for that, and we brought it to the community several years back, and it's time to bring it back again because there's a new generation of parents and a new generation of caregivers out there that we think would benefit from it. We're also looking at other prevention programs. We don't know which ones we might want to bring to town. There are more than 15 various evidence-based programs that have been vetted by the professionals. Some of them already exist in Erie, and if another agency is doing something, we have no interest in duplicating services. But if there's a gap, if there's something that could be useful that's not here, we'd love to be able to try to help bring it. So that's prevention's a big area for us, and we're really trying to ramp up that. Having been doing this for 22 years and seeing that number of children every year, and we just think, isn't there some way to interrupt this cycle and get on the front side?
With that said, a lot of times, if I'm understanding this correctly, people see child abuse. They're not directly connected with it. It could be a more distant family member or someone within the proximity of the family. How does that all work? What are your suggestions?
Well, we first of all depend upon the community to keep an eye out for the safety of children. No one besides those who are around the children can ever keep them safe. So we need those eyes in the community. And not to be spying on people or something like that, but if they see something that looks amiss, to not be afraid to report it. Pennsylvania has a child line number where people can anonymously report concerns. 1-800-932-0313 is the number for that. Or going online to keepkidssafe.pa.gov if one prefers the computer. But to make reports, anyone can make a report so that the authorities can take a look and just make sure the child is safe. And if the child is safe, good, no harm, no foul. If there is something going on, then you've saved a child. And as I always say, would rather have 10 reports that turn out to be nothing than to miss the one report that really is something and a child is in danger.
So no one should fear asking 800-932-0313, say an educational question like, I think this is what it is. Can you help me out? What should I do next? Is that appropriate for that telephone number?
It is. The operators that man that telephone number, it's a central location in Harrisburg, are trained to help the caller and to try to determine whether there's something that needs to be reported and to get the appropriate information, at least as much as the caller has. Sometimes it's much, sometimes it's not much. And then, make sure that it gets back to the right authorities in the right county to be able to take a look and just make sure a child is safe. And again, anyone can make those type of reports. There are certain people in certain professions that are required to report. Medical personnel, all types of medical personnel are required. Educators, teachers, coaches, people who run child activities like scouting or sports leagues or youth groups or clergy are all mandated reporters. There's a really rather extensive list of the people that Pennsylvania requires to make a report if they see something. And that's just another way to help protect children. I remember some years ago I had a phone call from somebody who would be a mandated reporter and said, "Can I run something by you?" And I said, "Well, sure." And started describing a situation, and I after the finish, I said, "What's the criteria for making a report?" I said, "What do you recall?" And the person said, "If you think that something seems off or you have a suspicion, you should make a report." And I said, "I think the fact that you even called me means you have a suspicion, doesn't it?"
Yeah, exactly.
And the person laughed and said, "You're absolutely right."
Well, I guess someone fears that someone's making an inappropriate accusation, but
that's
on the
always
other
a
hand,
fear.
Yeah, but you folks are trained to handle that, though, right?
Yeah. Again, we see there's a lot of reports that come over that I see our law enforcement investigator or our children and youth office investigate, and turns out not to be child abuse, and maybe it's a situation where the family actually has some need for some support of some sort, and by coming on somebody's radar, they get connected to somebody who can help them out. So those actually oftentimes come up positively. The state publishes statistics every year, and the most recent ones are from 2022. And there were over 1,000 reports of possible child abuse in Erie County in 2022. But only about 10% of those turned out to be actual abuse cases. Oftentimes, other things were just people that had needs that, and again, there's a lot of help from both county government and from nonprofit world to help people in those situations. So the reports actually help people out, and contrary to some fears, nobody's interested in taking anyone's children. That is a last resort. That's not something that people do at a drop of a hat.
Yeah, in other words, you folks exercise due diligence. With that, let's say something looks very, very obvious. What's the correct thing to do?
The current thing to do is, if you see something, say something, as the saying goes. Make a report if you have any concerns for the welfare of a child. And if you want to help us help children, go to our website and help us out too.
Yeah. If it becomes extreme, is a 911 call appropriate? Only if it's extreme?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. If a child looks to be in imminent danger, whether it's physical or sexual abuse, 911 is most appropriate. You want the authorities there immediately. That happens in a number of situations, including, unfortunately, these days you read the paper or hear the news of the gun violence or the drug overdoses and things like that. Children oftentimes get caught in the crossfire of all that. And to call the authorities and get them there quickly sometimes can be the difference between health and safety and terrible outcomes for children. So yes, it's always appropriate to call. And even if it's not an emergency, to call the non-emergency number from the department of that whatever location you're in, or to, again, call Childline. You can always directly call the County Office of Children and Youth if that's also an option. But definitely reach out.
It goes without saying, I'm sure this is true, that all the police officers have received training in this area.
Absolutely. The police officers are trained to assess a situation. We do what's called a minimal facts training, so they know how to get the basics of what's going on without interviewing the children, and that would defeat the purpose of why we do what we do. So they get the basic information, and then if a child needs more, they just refer it up the line. But they're all prepared to, and the police are wonderful with kids usually. They have a great heart for children, and so yeah, I would never hesitate to call my local police if I had a concern.
And it never hurts to ask a question.
The other thing is one should always call the authorities rather than trying to personally intervene.
Right.
Because one, you could misread the situation, but two, it also could be a dangerous situation if something is going on. And rather than trying to take things into one's own hands, let the authorities do their job. They're trained.
Before we run out of time in the last minute or so, could you talk a bit about prevention programs? What do you do? Are there programs available? How do other organizations help you do prevention?
Well, there are a number of organizations that do different things for prevention. One of them is particularly the Crime Victim Center, which has a number of prevention programs that they particularly go out to the schools. We don't go out to talk to the school kids because the Crime Victim Center is already doing that, and we don't duplicate. We certainly would talk to the teachers about mandated reporting if a school would like us to. But again, our prevention activities are focused on the parenting programs we do. But many agencies, the Erie Family Center, I know in Union City, the Family Center there has a number of programs for child safety. So there's a number of agencies around the city and the county who do different types of prevention depending on what one is looking for.
Do you belong to any national or statewide organizations?
Both of those. So we are a member of the National Children's Alliance, which is the nonprofit entity that is our accrediting body. It's accredited by the U.S. Department of Justice, and they accredit child advocacy centers across the country. And we also have a state organization called Penn CAC, which is a state chapter of all the CACs together. There's 46, I believe, in the state of Pennsylvania. So that we can pool our expertise and make sure training opportunities are available and that we're up to date on the most recent information that we need to know.
Michael Gaines, Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center here in Erie, Pennsylvania, serving all of Erie County. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to chat with us, bring us up to speed, and thank you for this interview.
Tom, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the program, and I'd like to wish everyone their best and say just please keep an eye out for our children.
Thank you.